Get the power to do more with Storable software. More automating, more control, more revenue, more time back in your day. Storable helps operators do more with the most powerful technology in self-storage. Learn more at storable.com/do more.
All right, we're ready to get started. So good morning, everybody. I'm going to start today with a couple of housekeeping items. So today's webinar is going to be about 30 minutes in length. If you guys do have any technical issues, please use the chat feature on the GoToWebinar panel, and we've got a couple people on standby that are going to be able to help you sort through those, get you guys up and running. We will say the most common issues we hear from folks are that audio starts to get a little choppy or a little scratchy. So if that does happen to you, please use the audio portion of the GoToWebinar panel and select the phone call option, and it'll give you a phone number to dial in. And for most folks, that's been a little bit more reliable than the computer audio option. And then lastly, we are going to do our best to answer some Q&A today. So submit questions via the questions section of the GoToWebinar panel. If we don't get a chance to get to all of your questions, we will be following up after the fact, probably early next week. So please submit those, and like I said, we'll get to them if we can. So let's get started. My name is Matthew Beal. I'm a product marketing manager here at Storable, and I'm going to be your host for the Navigating Uncertain Times webinar series. And before we get into today's roundtable, we wanted to start by giving you guys some insight into kind of why Storable launched this webinar series. And so we see it as our responsibility and frankly our privilege to provide some perspective and insight that we can during the midst of this crisis to help operators like you guys navigate these uncertain times. And we believe that we're in a unique position to do so for three main reasons. One is the breadth of our client base, and that's because we work with over half of the storage operators in the U.S., both large and small operators. We have a really broad view of how operators are addressing this crisis. And also our industry expertise. We have one of the largest teams in the storage industry that's made up of a number of folks that have, decades of experience in this industry. And that deep expertise, both operational and marketing, really allows us to help you guys address your various needs, as we navigate this crisis. And then lastly is the volume of resources. So we have a number of really strong relationships with industry associations and partners, some of which you're going to be hearing from today. They give us a really unique vantage point to see how the rest of the industry is interpreting and addressing this continuously evolving crisis, these evolving circumstances. And so all of these factors kind of put Storable at a unique intersection of a whole lot of information that yields a depth of perspective that we feel is our responsibility to share. And so we've been using these webinars as a vehicle to deliver that message. And so we want to take a quick look at what we've discussed so far. So over the last couple of months, we've been spending most of the time discussing how operators can solve the immediate business challenges that were presented by COVID-19, such as creating a contactless tenant experience or maximizing collections. Because after all, the world was really only turned upside down about 8 weeks ago, as crazy as that is to say. It's been a relatively short period of time. But now that some of the shock and adrenaline has worn off from those problems, we've started to kind of settle in for the long haul. And over the last couple of weeks, we've shifted the conversation to focus more on what operators can do to weather the storm and come out stronger on the other side. And so last week, we talked about how operators should be thinking about the use of automation across their portfolio to address things like unfavorable market forces, the COVID-19 health crisis, and then shifting consumer preferences. And if you'd like to review any of those former recordings that I was just referring to, they're all available on our blog at blog.storable.com. And then this week, we're going to continue that conversation on automation with another roundtable discussion. And we're really excited to have three experts on this topic joining us to share their perspectives. And we're going to introduce that panel momentarily. But next week, just to give a quick teaser, we're also excited to announce that we're going to be having Joe Sapphire, the CEO of Life Storage, on for a fireside chat with our CEO of Storable, Chuck Gordon. So there's more details to come on that, but get excited. Without further ado, though, let's jump into today's discussion. So I'd like to introduce today's moderator, the CEO of Storable, Chuck Gordon. So Chuck, take it away.
Thanks, Matt. Much appreciated. Very excited to be back here again this week and doing another exciting roundtable with a slightly different group of folks. We've been doing lots of conversations with operators, but this week we're going to have a little bit more of a vendor perspective and kind of what the vendors are seeing different customers out there doing. So this week I'm excited to introduce Phil Murphy, who's the president of CallPotential and next door storage. So Phil has definitely a unique perspective in that he is both a vendor and a storage operator. We've got Warren Lieberman, who's the president of Veritec Solutions, and we've got Robert Chiti, who's the CEO of OpenTech. There he is. All right, just in time. All right, great. So thank you guys all very much for joining us today. We're really excited. Let's just launch right into it. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was what are the specific changes you guys have made to your products in response to the COVID crisis, and kind of how have your customers been using them? So Warren, why don't we start with you on that?
Sure. Thank you, Chuck. And thanks a lot for organizing this panel. It's really wonderful and a great opportunity, especially how we're all meeting virtually these days. So just a moment, Veritec focuses on pricing and revenue management. And our primary focus is in working with companies with multiple stores. And as you can imagine, a number of our company clients have stores in multiple states. One of the things that has happened with COVID on the pricing side is that as the states went into a state of emergency, many of them had price gouging, pricing legislation that was triggered as a result of that. And there are a myriad of different ways in which prices are now controlled in the various states. So one of the capabilities that we added right at the beginning was the ability to understand how much pricing flexibility at the unit group, at the unit level, an operator would have. You might find it interesting that even though business is anything but normal, the most successful operators are still finding places where they can raise their prices. Demand is still strong enough. And so being able to understand at the store and state level what their ability to move prices is in a reasonable manner has been extraordinarily helpful.
Got it. So basically you've built features into your software that enable the operator to understand where they're still legally allowed to raise their prices and where they're not.
And by how much, so that they can kind of decide where and how close to that threshold they want to come. Exactly right.
That's awesome. That's super helpful. And how about you, Phil?
Yeah, no, some of the biggest shift that we've seen is really adoption of contact-free, the contactless payments, the contactless move-ins, especially driving a lot into that call center side of things. We've seen a lot of operators that have had to make adjustments in their store hours. Some are closing stores, some are closing them to the public, and we've seen a lot of increase in not only calls coming in that kind of rolling from those stores, but also how are customers interacting. One of the features that has really ramped up its use within our platform is that phone move-in side. So people are able to call in, handle that move-in directly over the phone, being able to within CallPotential, sending that e-sign out, getting it signed, getting it moved in without ever coming into the store. Same way on the payment side, we saw just from year over year, we've seen about a 50% increase in contactless payments that are coming in. People are still needing to pay, but they're doing it over text, over email, or pay by phone, and that ramp up was going to naturally happen anyway, but we're seeing it accelerating, with the midst of COVID.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think we've heard a lot of different operators talking about getting more people to pay online, move in online, that kind of thing. So it's good to hear that trend is, continuing on your end too. And Robert, how about you guys? What have you guys, changed to your product to kind of help your customers respond to COVID?
Well, we've been in the automation business all our life, so the functions of helping them operate without having managers there or not being able to be at the property has kind of been second nature to us. But the biggest changes we've seen is in our online auction businesses. So we spend a lot of time with the SSA and the legal team there, as well as other attorneys outside, understanding which places actually they can have legal auctions and which ones you can't, and working with our customers. But most of the time, it's become down to a business decision that they've made to say, we choose not to actually do auctions at this point because of either, the PR perspective of it, or they're just unclear if the law in some of these some of these eviction orders cover them or not. So that's where we've seen the biggest change in our business from a kind of a negative perspective for our business. But on the flip side, all the other things we do, call centers and kiosks and all that kind of stuff, that's all actually become a pretty active side of the business, because people are trying to figure out how to operate their properties in a more automated fashion. So
that makes sense. And I'll just add real quick from a Storable perspective. I think anyone who was watching the webinar last week saw a lot of these new features we've rolled out, but basically we've made it so that you can do online move-ins on Sparefoot for the first time, and we made it so that you could basically convert a reservation into an online move-in, which in the past was not possible. So there's a variety of improvements we've been making to try to help our customers respond better and more quickly to this crisis. The one thing I did want to add too is just if anyone has questions, please submit them through the chat feature, and we're going to try to answer a few of them at the end of the session. All right, so next up, I think there's something that's coming as a discussion point for the industry. Is many operators have historically talked about how the face-to-face can, customer to manager can make a really big difference in terms of everything from upselling premium units to establishing a better relationship with the customer to attaching insurance to all kinds of different things. And so as we move into this probably more semi-permanent or long-lasting contactless world, how is the perspective going to change on that human-to-human interaction, and is it just going to be permanently different from this point forward? Phil, what do you think, having a unique perspective of both the vendor and operator side?
Yeah, I think right now as operators, we've got to be preparing for, there's two different ways we got to prepare. One is, I've talked to a lot of people, they go, well, this will be over in a month. I don't need to make changes. And as operators, we've got to prepare as if this is 6 months, a year, we've got to be over prepared. But at the same time, what this is doing is, all this is doing is accelerating what was going to happen anyway. We were going to be heading towards automation. We're going to be heading towards self-serve. We're going to be heading towards a lot of the technology that's out there. I mean, look at the Zoom meeting that we're on now. This is just accelerating it. What we found, it's just like when I go to Walmart, and we've got to let people do business the way they want to do business. It's something where if people want to go in there, when I go into Walmart, if I want to go in and get my groceries and go to the normal checkout person, I can do that. Or if I want to go self-checkout, I can do that. Or if I want to go, I don't want to even go inside, I can go out and get my app, I can go in and pull up and pick up. We're going to end up still continuing to do that post-COVID. And so the pendulum is going to swing back. How far it's going to swing back, we don't know. But for those that are waiting for it to swing back to where it was in February, that's not going to happen. We're going to be somewhere in between. And if we're not getting processes, technology, pieces in place for that new world, I think we're not necessarily going to end up closing down, but we're not going to have the revenues, the growth that our other operators are going to, that are adapting the new world.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, people are being forced to use technology who probably never would have before, and they're not going to go back to 100% the way they were before. My favorite example is my 93-year-old grandparents who, now know how to use Zoom, which I definitely never anticipated would be a possibility. So how about you, Robert? What's your view on this topic?
Well, we're not very big on automation or self-service. We kind of think it's a fad. 16 years we've been working at it to convince the self-storage industry that there's some value in some situations for providing customers a way to do it themselves. Doing it online, which you guys have just announced with Sparefoot and your property management systems is phenomenal for them. Being able to rent a unit online is probably the most shocking thing that I've seen, that it's not happening as much as it should have in the last 3 or 4 years with self-storage operators. And I think today, hopefully most of them are listening and they see that this is a primary function that people want to do, tenants, consumers want to do. And so they're going to, with that, if you're not renting units online, you probably shouldn't be in the business, to be honest with you. So we think that's a big form of automation and self-service that is, I think it's here to stay. That one I don't think is going away. The rest of the stuff that we're hearing from operators is, the relationships are the issues related to what I call physical distancing. I don't understand the term social distancing when all we do is spend time socializing. But okay, so anyway, we call it physical distancing, and self-service at the facility does seem to be a way to help alleviate some of that stuff. You don't have to actually deal with a person directly, and we've got a lot of people calling us talking about, well, now we're used to using Zoom and stuff. Your two-way video on a self-service system, probably much like Zoom. So our consumers are much more adapt to it now, and it's going to be like dealing with a live person, except you don't have to run whenever they sneeze. So for us, we think the world looks like it's a better place when we're done with this and people are cured and not obviously being sick. But we think the operations of self-storage properties are going to certainly accelerate the automation, concepts. Again, that's probably self-serving, but that's the way I see the world. So.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective too. Maybe you can kind of split the difference, right? If you have a video of your manager equivalent, you can still get some of the benefits of having that person-to-person interaction without having to be near each other.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that it's all automated. I'm a big believer of the platinum rule, and Phil was talking about it. You do unto others as they wish to be done unto, and that is all about serving them the way they want to be serviced. So there's still going to be people that, I don't care what age it is, there's still going to be people that are millennials that want to come in and meet the person behind the counter. And there's going to be people that are in different age groups that say, I don't want to meet anybody. I don't want you to even know that I'm there. I'm just going to do it online and never see you. Use a self-service system. So there's different segments of the market out there that I think they're going to continue to behave differently. And the key is for a self-storage operator is to be able to serve them in all those channels. Don't try to come up with one that's, kind of halfway, it's kind of a mix of all of them. Understand you can't like have a reservation online, but then you come to the office and rent. Well, to me, that's really not the answer. The answer is serve those people online the way they want to be served, serve the people at the property the way they want to be served. A lot more difficult to run the business that way, but I think that's where we're going to end up.
Yep, that makes sense. And Warren, I'm curious in your perspective too, since I understand a lot of what you guys do is help operators kind of provide different tiers of pricing for their units, and ultimately the manager has a lot to do with trying to sell that more premium unit to the customer. So how do you see this world impacting operators' ability to do that?
Yeah, Chuck, thanks. In fact, Robert and Phil made a lot of very good points. Because we've been dealing with pricing, we've been dealing with what's the right level of automation on a lot of different levels, ranging everything from should you have a system that makes price changes automatically without operator involvement, or do you require an operator to make those changes? There's a whole spectrum there. In fact, one of the things that we did, again, this was especially helpful for the early on in COVID, a lot of operators wanted to rescind rent increases that they already had planned and put in the system. And our integration with SiteLink let those operators do that automatically, if you will, through our system, rather than one by one, as if they had to do that in the SiteLink system itself. So it saved them a lot, some situations, several days of manual effort. One other thing, and I'll get to the value pricing in a moment, but I have to say this because I just think it's so good. You and I, Chuck, share exactly the same experience with the 90-year-olds using Zoom. The difference is it's my parents rather than my grandparents. But other than that, yes, wonderful opportunity for us to talk later about that experience.
That's funny.
We've always found that philosophically, companies will have different attitudes on automation, and we try to allow our software as well to fit with whatever level it wants to be. So if you want to move on the more manual side, you can do that. But over time, companies generally want to do more automation, and it lets them move in that direction. There is no question that the employees and the type of employees a company have can make an incredibly big difference as a differentiator for the operator. We all know that if we go to companies, whether it's the barrister at the coffee shop, we all know that there are certain companies that we go to because we like the individual who we're working. And much in the same way, our value pricing system, which lets companies get more rent for the more convenient units that are in a unit group, and it does it dynamically. And I won't go into the details now, but obviously happy to talk about that later. It's the salesmanship of the operator and how they do that, whether they are in person with them, whether they are doing it on a phone call, whether they're doing it virtually. There's all sorts of ways for that interaction to occur, and we try to support it. And now we're moving more and more towards, I would say, even with the website developers, supporting upgrades as part of the reservation process. That's going to allow operators to get even more revenue from these kinds of capabilities.
So really, it's all about digitizing the process that historically has been reliant on that human interaction.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, Chuck, with what Warren and Robert were saying too, I mean, that's an important clarification, at least the way I see technology is technology is really, we really look at it as an enabler for the manager. You know, it's how do we make them more efficient? How do we make their job easier? How do we make them more capable of what they're doing? You know, it's there's certainly those areas in those business plans where a full automation is good. But for me as a consumer and an operator, you know, the customer service side is essential. And so it's what technology, you know, when I make technology decisions, I look and go, how does it fit the customer experience? How does it help me draw those customers in? So whether it's, you know, full automation, you know, from a kiosk to the traditional walk in the store and fill out a lease, I mean, how do I fit the full spectrum without having to sacrifice what differentiates me from the guy down the road who I'm $10 higher than? Because if I'm in a commodity situation, it's really hard for me to justify that $10.
You know, I just want to step back to Warren's point, because I think it's really, really important, is that I think that there's several leaders in industry like Warren and others that have proven that by using some of these pricing models, they can have a much more better performing, financially performing business, and it works. But it's been working through the human manager. And I think what he just said to us a minute ago, which I think is really key, is that as we start working with the other touch points like the website and like a call center and like a kiosk and all the other ways that, you know, as a vendor, I think our challenge is to work with Warren to make sure that we're able to communicate the value of that, is it called a value unit or a premier unit or the higher priced units. We're able to actually explain that to them through these digital fashions, or, you know, and so far we're cheating on our side because we're using a live person on the phone to do our calls. I know they're really good, but they really are actually live people, and they're not robots yet. And same with the kiosk, we have that live person. So we're still substituting that person in, but we have to get better at being able to take the value that Warren products deliver to the operator and put it through all the channels, all the digital channels as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we all know this is possible, right? Because back in the days when we used to go to hotels, for example, I mean, how many times have you gotten you're booking your hotel room and they're like, do you want that corner view king suite? Of course I do. So, you know, it's possible to do it. You know, we just have to build the tools, and, you know, that's our role. Okay, real quick, before we jump to some Q&A, Phil, I'm curious from you, just from an operator's perspective, I know everyone's wondering what's going on with delinquency, and have we seen any sort of material change in May?
You know, we haven't really seen, you know, so we did an analysis and we're actually publishing it out here on our blog later on this week. But we did an analysis of the first 5 days of March, April, and May. And while we're seeing a lot of automation and payments and things like that, I'm on the operating side, we're not seeing a noticeable shift in our 7-day and our 30-day. The one thing we have seen is a significant increase in auto pay enrollments, which was surprising. You know, a lot of people who are sitting there not wanting to deal with the delinquency, not wanting to deal with, they used to come in, and so we saw year over year about an 88% growth in auto pay enrollments, and that was shocking to me. But delinquency numbers have been, they're up, but they're not concernedly up.
Phil's trying to kill my auction business.
There you go. I'd love to never auction a unit, but it's pie in the sky.
Yeah, I understand. But when you need to, there's a company out there that will help you.
Yeah, no, that's really good to hear, Phil. I mean, I think that everyone throughout this crisis has been kind of saying, well, what's going to happen on April 1st? Is anyone going to pay me? What's going to happen on May 1st? Is anyone going to pay me? And now, of course, the question is June. But the fact that we keep asking that question, and so far the impact has really not happened, is certainly a good sign. I don't think it means we can rest on our laurels, or anyone should expect that having 30 million plus unemployed Americans is not going to have some kind of impact. But it's certainly encouraging to see such resilience in self-storage so far. Okay, so why don't we really quick check with Matt here. Matt, do we have any questions come in?
Yep, so we've got a couple I can throw you guys' way. So first up is we have an operator who just recently turned on online reservations and move-ins for the first time as part of this. And unfortunately, they had a fraudulent ACH reservation in the first couple of days. So they were just kind of looking for guidance on how you guys think about that and how you guys kind of protect against that.
Interesting. Who wants to handle that one?
I can. We've been doing online rentals and for, I don't know, 8 years now, and so we've seen similar things to that. It's typically credit. The real one that seems to be credit card, where people actually rent on a credit card, then they dispute it. You know, that happens. But the other thing that we've seen is that just to understand the actual identity of someone. So there's services that you can do. Because I'm not quite sure what the challenge was with the credit card fraud, but there's services out there like from ID scan where when you're renting a unit, you can actually require people to answer what they call out of the wallet permissible questions. We've all done it when we've signed up for some healthcare thing or forgot our password on our financial situation where they ask you questions. You know, I saw you had a home loan or a car loan. What year was it? Blah, blah, blah. So it's a way to identify someone, even if, you know, correctly, even if somebody stole your wallet, they couldn't actually fulfill those questions. And so that cuts down on a lot of the fraud. We've got a couple friends in the industry, very large operators that started doing online rentals probably a year ago. And we started talking to them about those problems because we were handling some of their surveillance and security. And once they implemented that service, they said it actually dropped significantly. They didn't have the people renting online that were giving false information and then coming in and trying to cause problems. So I would just recommend using like an ID verification service during the rental process.
That's a good idea. Good idea. Okay. Matt, what other questions we got? Oh.
Yep. So one more is, do you guys feel like there's any downside to being fully automated? With kind of a follow-up question of, for those folks that are, you know, investing heavier in automation, how do you make sure that they kind of they feel like they're receiving a high level of care, even in that high automation situation?
Great question.
So certainly.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, real quick, Phil. I know I cut you off there in the last one. Do you want to touch on that one for a second?
Oh, I was going to say with the move-in, you know, to be honest, the move-in decline in transactions, I'm actually not worried about those as an operator, simply because, you know, when they move in, I've got their stuff. I'm able to overlock that unit when it's disputed. I tend to want to remove barriers to entry. And so the more things I put out there, the more things I check. I really rely on my manager. I rely on my manager going out there and being diligent, checking to see who's coming in. Now, we're not completely shut down, but it's credit card rescinding, ACH transactions being declined. they're part of business. But what I've found is that 80-20 rule of if I've got a couple outliers, especially because it was my first one, if I go and adjust all my policies, I'm going to prevent more people than that one bad apple that was in there, especially if I go overlock their unit. They're going to be back into pay at some point.
Yep, that makes sense.
And if I can just add on the pricing side, we actually, I think, may even have a slightly atypical view of automation. While we believe automation is critical, we also believe that when you're making pricing, somebody in the organization really needs to be held accountable for what the prices are. So we actually don't ascribe fully automated pricing programs because in our experience, when that happens, the person who's responsible for pricing gets a little bit more distance from what the actual prices are and why they're there. So our focus has always been on trying to make it easy as possible for the analysts to understand why prices should be increased, why prices should be decreased, why somebody should get a high rent increase, why somebody else should get a lower rent increase. You know, all of the reasons for it, make it easy to do it so that they can essentially spend their time thinking about what they're doing and why, and then if they get asked, why is our price so-and-so, why did someone get a high rent, they have the answers to those questions. And so our focus, if you will, is on providing the level of automation that allows people to remain accountable and then generate as much revenue for their business and profit for their business as possible.
Yep.
You know, and that strategy probably answers some of Matt's questions too, is that it sounds like to me, Warren, and this is what we do in some of the things that we work with operators, is we help them kind of do some of the mundane stuff, and Phil, of course, in doing a lot of the things they do related to collections for sure. So you pull out some of those mundane things off their list, which is what I believe you're doing, so they can focus on the more high value pieces. And so it's not about necessarily not having people or totally automated. It's really about taking the resources you have and getting the most value out of them. So that person that is on the property can be doing some real high touch, high value stuff, you know, not doing the number crunching with a spreadsheet, or not having to call another collections person, or not having to stand there while somebody puts in their credit card to make a payment and get a receipt. There's no value in those things. So that's what we've seen in automation. To answer that, I think Matt's question is, and what Warren had said is, it's real automation and technology is really about reducing a lot of the non-value tasks that managers and people have to do, and allowing them to have time to do the high-value tasks.
Exactly right, and much better said than I was able to do myself.
No, that was good.
All right, guys. Well, we are just about out of time here, so I want to thank you again, Phil, Warren, Robert. Really, really appreciate you donating your time to us this Friday, and this was a great discussion, and I'll hand it back over to Matt.
Thank you.
You're muted.
All right. Yeah, good call. Yeah, thank you, Chuck. I just wanted to just really echo what Chuck said. For all of our panelists today, I think I speak for everyone when I say that was incredibly helpful insight. And so we really appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to help provide guidance during, you know, these crazy times. So thank you, guys.
Great weekend.
Before we wrap up today, though, we wanted to go over a couple of exciting recent developments, specifically for the Storable clients out there in attendance. And so Chuck alluded to these earlier, but given the importance of automation in the wake of this health crisis, we really wanted to give our customers the tools that they need to succeed. And so last week, we released our fully integrated contactless move-in capabilities across our platform. And so our team fast-tracked this release to ensure that you had the tools you needed to be successful for your business now and well into the future. And they stretch across three main categories. One is we released contactless move-in badging for Sparefoot to allow your consumers to know that you provide a contactless move-in experience. There's also online move-ins through Sparefoot, which Chuck was speaking about earlier. And then lastly is we have SMS and email online move-ins that have been enabled for both the SiteLink and the storage management software. So each of these capabilities are available to you at no additional cost. And if you want to learn more about how to enable these, and I saw a couple questions come in when Chuck was talking about these earlier, we're going to be sending out some Help Center articles in our follow-up email today that'll walk you through exactly how to do that. So be on the lookout for that. And then lastly is we also have recently released a series of best practices articles for storage and site link software, as well as Sparefoot and storage websites. And these articles are specifically meant to help you identify the capabilities that are already available in your product to be able to solve the various unique business challenges presented by COVID. And so these are on each of their respective help centers, but we also recently released hour-long webinars for the two software products in particular. And these are meant to take those articles to the next level by demonstrating how you can configure and use each of those capabilities discussed in the articles. So we'll also be including links in the follow-up email today, but you can find them at blog.storable.com if you just can't wait and you want to go check it out now. And that concludes today's webinar. So if you guys do have any questions that come through after we conclude the webinar today, feel free to email us at webinars@storable.com and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But with that being said, we did capture a whole lot of other questions we didn't have an opportunity to get to today, and we will chase down some answers to those and we'll get back to you guys early next week. But to all of you guys, we hope you guys stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you next week for the fireside chat with Life Storage CEO Joe Sapphire. So have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.